All right, there's two things that I want to use as a point of departure, okay?
Yep.
I want to start with just this quote from Marcos, okay? Because he sums up the sort of the structural argument, which I think is legit, but it goes like this. In 2004, Republicans won big and Democrats were left trying to figure out what went wrong. In 2006, Democrats won big and they decided everything was fine. Republicans merely shrugged it off as a 6-year itch that bedevils parties that hold the White House in a president's last midterm. In 2008, Democrats won big again and Republicans were left fumbling for excuses, but mainly decided it was Bush's fault and an artifact of Obama's historic campaign. In 2010, Republicans won big, so they were validated. All was fine. Democrats were left fumbling. In 2012, Democrats won big, so they decided everything was fine. Demographics and data to the rescue. Republicans decided to rebrand until they decided, F that, no rebranding was needed. Now in 2014, Republicans are validated again, and Democrats own 6-year itch elections, and Democrats are scrambling for answers. Here's what the future will look like. In 2016, Democrats will win big on the strength of presidential year turnout. Republicans will realize they have a crap time winning presidential elections, and maybe they should do something about it. In 2018, Republicans will win on the strength of off-year Democratic base apathy, and they'll decide everything is okay after all. And it's going to be brutal because those are the governorships we need for the 2020 redistricting. Republicans will then lock up the House for another decade. Then in 2020, Democrats will win on presidential year turnout and so on and so on. That's right. the structural dilemma that we have on some level, right?
Do you want to discuss that one first, or would you like to read the second thing
let's
first?
let's play the second thing next, okay, so that we can take these two things in their totality, because this is I think the baseline of what went on was a function of that structural dilemma that Marcos sort of puts out there. Basically, that Democrats have trouble getting people to the polls just generally, or there's a general reluctance. Let me put it this way. There's a general reluctance of people in an off-year election to take these elections seriously on the Democratic side. But then there's this part of the equation, too, which was summed up, frankly, by The Daily Show. Jordan Klepper, as the correspondent, talking to Jon Stewart, and this is what he had to say. Play this.
11:27 Eastern Time, the Republicans gained control of the U.S. Senate, and results were almost immediate. The economy now growing at a robust 3.5%. Gas this morning, under $3 a gallon. Look, stock market at record levels. Deficits cut in half. 10 million more Americans have health insurance. And unemployment sub 6% for the first time since we elected Chairman Obama.
Well, wait, hang on a second, Jordan, because the things that you're describing...
Like even Ebola, John, think about this, which was on the verge of destroying the country under Obama's feckless leadership, has suddenly become a problem for, like, one guy. It's morning in America, John.
Jordan, that is an incredibly impressive list that you ticked off of things that happened under Obama and the Democratic Senate.
Oh, please, John. If Democrats had accomplished all of that, they would have been out there bragging about it for months. It would have been the central message of their campaign instead of their actual message, which was like, I'm quoting this here, "We're sorry, don't be mad. We don't like Obama either. We like guns, too." Amen.
Jordan, everything you're describing is exactly how things were before last night.
No, not from where I'm standing. It's like suddenly this country, it's like people are filled with like an anticipation, an optimistic expectation. It's like a sense of
hope. It's hope.
Right,
yeah,
right. But
right.
more than that, it's as though like things are going to be. It's not like they're the same as they once were. They're going to be different. They're going
to change. It's hope and change.
Yes.
Hope and change.
Yes.
Right.
You feel it too, John. Hope and change. That's the Republican message.
The Republicans cannot claim that as their message.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. God. The American people, they can. The American people, they're grateful. They've already...
All right, so that's basically it right there. Is the Democrats ran on nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So let's tackle both of those because I think the one thing that drives me crazy and why I like to think hopefully we're different here, Sam, about so many mainstream pundits is, as I always call for me, it's the Norwood rule, which goes back to that Super Bowl between the Giants and the Buffalo Bills. You may remember 90-91, where essentially if the kicker ends up missing the kick, the Giants win, and so Buffalo did everything wrong. But if that kick that went just wide had gone in and Buffalo won, then they would have found a million reasons why the Giants did everything wrong and Buffalo did everything right, just based on that one thing. And I think that's punditry in Washington. And so I think it's important to sit here and say, there were a number of factors. Look, you and I don't remember if you predicted, but I thought they were going to hold on to the Senate. It doesn't mean that at the time I thought they had a great message. It doesn't mean I thought the turnout machine they put together would be good enough to get it going and pull them over the top. I thought some candidates would be good enough to win while still thinking there should have been much more to run on.
Right.
So we should be honest because I'm never going to be Bill Kristol and be like, what? Me wrong? You know what I mean? So I think that's important. There's numerous factors here. Marcos hits one of them, but it's not just that one. And it's funny because what Jon Stewart, it fits into that perfectly because I was going to bring up when you read Marcos's structural analysis, it seemed like, he was saying this is, we don't see things changing. This is the foreseeable future. And I think of two times when obviously in recent history, this was very different. Actually, three times, let's talk about it. One is 98, right? Where the Republicans went after Bill Clinton on impeachment. And Democrats came out and told people what they had done for them and said, these guys are trying to stop us with impeachment, right? And in the end, they gained a governor's seat, I believe. They held the Senate even, and they gained 3 House seats. In 2002, even though it was lies and bullshit, the Republicans came out and said, see, we're protecting you, and we're going to make sure that nobody does this to you again. And everybody was shell-shocked by 9/11. So the people who had a positive message that they were going to do something, even though it was Bush was in office, they kind of beat the usual midterm losses, which again we don't have huge statistical information in the modern media age of what happens during a midterm. So let's be realistic about that too. Everybody wants to generalize everything out, and it can't always be done. Finally, in 2006, where Bush should have lost some seats, theoretically, right? This is 6-year itch and all of that. The Democrats, if you remember, before they really started pushing the message of getting out of Iraq, there hadn't been a wave forming yet. But once they did that, largely part of that was Ned Lamont going after Joe Lieberman in a Democratic primary, and all over with Democrats saying, here's what we will do for you. We will get you out of this terrible war that you don't want to be in, that is wasting our money and getting people killed. And the Democrats turned that into a huge wave. So, and there's other times too, but let's just go with those right now.
All right, well, hold on. Let me just amend 2006 too. The other thing that was operative in 2006, the Iraq War was a huge rallying point for Democrats. But I'm also convinced that because that was an incentive for Democrats to really get out and vote, but they also pushed the corruption of the Republican Party. I mean, remember, that's when you had Foley down in Florida, and the whole intern scandal, and
you had what's his name, Mr. Super Lobbyist in D.C. with the restaurant,
and the guy who was the head of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee from upstate New York, surrounding himself with children so that reporters couldn't.
Well, you have that, but what's important to say is that you need again, like I feel like we always repeat ourselves here. People react to stories. That's why movies do well. You need a story. You need one that evokes emotion. And in a story, you basically need to have who's the good guy who's going to help you, how are they going to help you, who's the bad guy who's caused your problems, what are their problems, and how are you going to stop that? And if you don't tell a story, which has been the biggest Obama problem, I think, often, with a lot of his programs, he doesn't tell a story of everything because he doesn't want to be mean. If he'd come in and when he was elected and reminded people what the Republicans had trashed the place, they couldn't handle a hurricane in a major American city. The economy had gone to crap under them. If he'd done all that stuff and said, here's how we're going to help you, oh my God, does health care and everything in 2010, in my opinion, go a ton better. Just like FDR came in 32 and kept telling that story. And in 34, there was a blowout where they won another huge election. So what I'm saying here is you're right. You need a negative message. And there was one in 2006 that was based on they're corrupt. They're trying to privatize your Social Security as part of their corruption. Mm-hmm. They couldn't even handle Katrina. They're appointing people who are corrupt. And we're going to help you. And corruption also, by the way, got us into the Iraq War, right? But we're going to get you out. Here's what we're going to do for you. Besides, here's the reforms. And that's how they're going to always be at an advantage, or at least as our current lineup goes, because older, whiter voters turn out more, wealthier. It's just the way it goes. So there's an upper middle class professional base of Democrats who, that's one of the parts of the Democratic base that turns out. But for other groups of Democrats who are looking at tougher times and don't have a motivation to just turn out, you need to remind them why they're for you. And you need to remind them not just 6 months beforehand. You need to stand up for certain things. You need to have, I hate using the term, but you need to have a brand. People need to know what you stand for. And when your response is after you pass the stimulus and everything, and then you lose in 2010 because you don't tell people a story, and your response is, well, we're going to tighten our belts, and now we're for austerity, and we're going to cut Social Security and Medicare, what the hell do you stand for, and why should people come out and vote for you? Why do they trust you? If the Democrats had built this whole election and based it on policies of the last couple of years and then ran on trying to increase Social Security, trying to increase public spending for education, fighting for new job programs, at least offering them in the Senate, making speeches about them, barnstorming the country, fighting for infrastructure spending that would create jobs, and explained that to people, because not letting it get demonized like the stimulus, which is, oh, we're not going to tell you why it's going to do any good. We're just throwing a bunch of money out there, but you have no idea what it's doing. You don't know that it's for these programs that Republicans are taking credit for at home that are actually creating jobs. If you did that, because as they were saying there, look, and you need to remind people of the positive things you've done, as they were saying on Jon Stewart, absolutely. But when most people feel like, yes, employment's gotten better, but wages haven't gone up and they're still hurting, you can't sit there and not tell them what you're still going to do for them in the future. Yep. So it needs to be, here's what we've done for you to dig you out of this Republican mess. Here's where things were in 2008 when I took over. Here's where things are now. Here's what we've proposed to do for you that Republicans are blocking, and not run away from Obamacare, not even call it Obamacare. Here's the Affordable Care Act, which they fought. Here I am, Allison Lundgren-Grimes in Kentucky. Here's this fantastic program, Connect, that's working so well for you. Here I am, Mark Pryor in Arkansas. Here I am, Begich in Alaska, and every other one of the vulnerable candidates. Here's how you've gotten health care. The reason why you don't have $5,000 or whatever more dollars coming out of your pocket is because of us. This is what we've done for you. Don't let them just call it Obamacare and scare you away from it. Call it the Affordable Care Act and tell them what it's doing for them and how you fought to pass it, because it's helping them. Tell them how you're going to make sure that wealthy people pay the same tax that everybody else pays on Social Security, so that your Social Security check is going to go up, because that's what we should be doing. It's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. And during hard economic times, it's the smart thing to do. And on like that. You need to explain to people, this is why the White House's press shop has driven me crazy. It's why Democrats are running away from accomplishments drives me crazy. I mean, to some degree, they're all to blame for this.
Yes,
and that's it.
And I want to make this...
Last thing I'll say, and then, I know I've been talking a lot. Let me let you jump in. But that is how you defeat what is automatically going to be a structural disadvantage for us at every midterm. That's the way. Republicans don't need to do as much. Sure, they need to give a positive program somewhat, but their people are already going to turn out because they're angry old codgers. And that's what you're looking at.